The large digital board at Dallas International Airport showed 4:35 p.m. as Maya Johnson wheeled her carry-on suitcase through the busy terminal. She wore a simple navy blazer over a white blouse, her natural hair pulled back neatly in a bun. Nothing about her appearance suggested she was anything but a regular business traveler, which was exactly how she preferred it. Maya checked her watch, a plain black timepiece that doubled as a secure communication device, and quickened her pace. Flight 2387 to Istanbul would board in 40 minutes, giving her just enough time to clear security and reach her gate. The mission briefing documents were safely encrypted on a device that looked like an ordinary e-reader, tucked away in her bag. Stay bland, stay forgettable. Her trainer had drilled into her during her first year at the agency. Maya had mastered the art of blending in, of being the person whose face you couldn't quite recall 5 minutes after meeting her. It was a valuable skill in her line of work. As she approached the security checkpoint, Maya noticed the lines were shorter than usual. Good, she'd be through in no time. "Ticket and ID, please," said the TSA agent, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes who barely glanced at Maya before waving her toward the security screening area. Maya placed her small suitcase on the conveyor belt, along with her blazer, shoes, and the bin containing her phone and watch. She walked through the body scanner without issue and waited for her belongings. That's when she noticed Officer Thompson watching her. He was a stocky man with a buzz cut and a security uniform that seemed slightly too tight around his neck. His eyes narrowed as she collected her things. "Ma'am, step over here, please," he called, gesturing to a small table off to the side. Maya complied without comment. This wasn't unusual in her experience, both as an agent and as a black woman who traveled frequently. "Is there a problem?" she asked calmly. "Just a random check," Officer Thompson replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. He was joined by Officer Reynolds, a taller, thinner man with a permanent frown etched on his face. "We need to inspect your bag," Maya nodded. "Of course." Reynolds began removing items from her suitcase while Thompson examined her passport and boarding pass with unusual scrutiny. "Business or pleasure?" Thompson asked, his eyes still fixed on her documents. "Business," Maya replied simply. "What kind of business takes you to Turkey?" The question came with a hint of suspicion that made Maya's internal alarms buzz faintly. This was beyond the usual random selection questioning. "I work in international finance consulting," she answered, using one of her established cover stories. "My company has clients in Istanbul." Thompson exchanged a glance with Reynolds, who was now flipping through her e-reader. "This doesn't turn on," Reynolds stated flatly. Holding up the device, "The battery's dead," Maya explained. "I have the charger in my bag." "Convenient," Thompson muttered, just loud enough for her to hear. Maya remained silent, maintaining her calm exterior while mentally calculating how this delay might affect her timeline. She couldn't afford to miss this flight. "What's your company's name?" Thompson pressed. "Meridian Global Consulting," Maya replied. It was a real firm with real offices, real employees, and a real website, all maintained by the agency as cover for operations just like this one. Thompson typed something into his computer terminal, then frowned. "No record of any Maya Johnson working there," he declared with a note of triumph. Maya tilted her head slightly. "That's impossible. I've been with them for 3 years. Perhaps check under M. Johnson?" Reynolds had finished unpacking her carefully organized suitcase, leaving her clothes and toiletries in disarray. He shook his head at Thompson, indicating he hadn't found anything suspicious. "Ms. Johnson, your story isn't adding up," Thompson said, his voice taking on an official tone that drew attention from nearby travelers. "Your company doesn't list you as an employee. You're traveling to a high-risk country, and you're carrying a device that conveniently doesn't work." Maya felt a flicker of frustration but kept her expression neutral. "Officer, I assure you my employment is legitimate. Perhaps there's an issue with the database you're checking. My supervisor can verify." "We'll need you to come with us for additional questioning," Thompson interrupted, gesturing toward a frosted glass door marked, "Security personnel only." By now, several travelers were watching the interaction. Maya noticed a young white couple whispering to each other as they glanced her way. An older man shook his head and quickly looked away when she caught his eye. "May I see your supervisor?" Maya asked, keeping her voice steady. "You can speak to the supervisor after we complete our investigation," Reynolds replied. "Right now you need to come with us." Maya checked her watch again. 30 minutes until boarding. This was becoming a problem. "I'd like to make a phone call first," she said. "Phones aren't allowed in the secondary screening area." Thompson responded with a thin smile. "You can call whoever you need after we're done." Maya knew her rights as both a citizen and a federal agent. "I believe I'm entitled to contact someone before further detention." Thompson's smile vanished. "You're not being detained, ma'am. You're being screened. There's a difference. But if you insist on being difficult, we can certainly make this a detention." Maya recognized the tactic: create confusion about her status to deny her certain rights. She'd studied this in training and had even taught a class on civil liberties to new recruits last year. The irony wasn't lost on her. "I'm not being difficult, Officer Thompson," she said, emphasizing his name as she'd noted it on his badge. "I'm simply requesting clarification of my status and the opportunity to make a call." Something in Thompson's eyes hardened. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Lots of people miss flights every day. Whether you make yours is entirely up to you." Maya measured her response carefully. She needed to stand her ground without escalating the situation further. "I understand you're doing your job, officer. I'm simply asking to contact my supervisor to verify my employment. That would clear this up quickly." Reynolds leaned in. "Maybe she's got something to hide, Mike. Why else would she be this resistant?" "I'm not hiding anything," Maya replied evenly. "But I do have rights." Thompson's radio crackled and he stepped aside to answer it. Reynolds continued to watch Maya with undisguised suspicion. When Thompson returned, his manner had changed. There was a smugness to his expression that made Maya's stomach tighten. "Well, Miss Johnson, it seems there are some irregularities with your travel history as well. Multiple trips to countries of interest over the past year. Short stays, different aliases." Maya kept her face composed, though internally she was recalculating her options. Thompson shouldn't have access to that information. Her cover identities were backstopped through classified systems. Either he was bluffing or there was a serious security breach. "I think you've made a mistake," she said carefully. "No mistake," Thompson replied. "And now you're going to need to come with us." Maya glanced at the departure board. 25 minutes to boarding. Her window was closing fast. "Officer Thompson, I'd like to speak with a supervisor immediately," she said, her tone firmer now. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." Thompson stepped forward, invading her personal space. "The only misunderstanding here is you thinking you can come into my airport with fake credentials and attitude." His words hung in the air. "My airport." The possessive tone told Maya everything she needed to know about what was really happening. "Your airport?" she repeated quietly. Thompson's face flushed slightly. "You know what I mean." "I'm not sure I do," Maya countered. "But I'd be happy to discuss it with your supervisor." Reynolds moved to Thompson's side, creating a wall of authority between Maya and the rest of the terminal. "Ma'am, you need to lower your voice and come with us now." Maya hadn't raised her voice, and they all knew it. She looked around, noting the increasing number of onlookers. Some had phones out, though no one was openly recording yet. "I believe I'm being singled out unfairly," she stated clearly, making sure her words carried to those watching. "I've provided all the requested documentation and answered your questions truthfully." Thompson grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in just enough to hurt without leaving marks. "That's it. You're coming with us now." Maya didn't resist physically, that would only play into their hands, but she did raise her voice slightly. "Am I being detained, Officer Thompson?" The question hung in the air, forcing him to commit one way or the other. "Yes," he finally snapped. "You're being detained for interfering with security procedures." Maya nodded once, as if that was exactly what she'd expected. "Then I formally request my phone call and a written explanation of the specific procedures I've interfered with." Reynolds looked uncertain for the first time, glancing at Thompson. This wasn't going according to whatever script they'd had in mind. Thompson's grip on her arm tightened momentarily before he released her. "Get your things. You're not flying today." "On what grounds?" Maya asked, though she already knew the answer wouldn't be the truth. "Security threat assessment," Thompson replied vaguely. "Your behavior has been deemed non-compliant and suspicious." As Reynolds roughly repacked her suitcase, Maya reached for her phone only to have Thompson block her. "That's evidence now," he said, picking it up and dropping it into an evidence bag. "Evidence of what exactly?" Maya asked. Thompson ignored the question. You have two options. You can leave the airport now, or we can continue this conversation in a holding cell. Your choice. Maya weighed her options. The mission was time-sensitive but not critically urgent. Director Harrington could reassign it or send her tomorrow. Fighting this battle now would only delay her further and potentially compromise her cover. I'll leave, she said finally. Thompson smiled, victory written across his face. Smart choice. Officer Reynolds will escort you to the exit. As Reynolds led her toward the main terminal, Maya heard Thompson speaking into his radio. Situation contained. Subject is being removed from the secure area. Subject. Not passenger. Not person. Subject. Maya walked silently beside Reynolds, her mind already formulating her report to Harrington. She'd need to contact him as soon as she was clear of the airport. This incident would have consequences, just not the ones Thompson and Reynolds were expecting. As they reached the main entrance, Reynolds handed her the suitcase. Don't come back today, he warned. We've flagged your ID in the system. Maya accepted her luggage without comment and walked through the sliding glass doors into the humid afternoon air. Only when she was a good distance from the entrance did she allow herself a small, knowing smile. Thompson and Reynolds had just made the biggest mistake of their careers. They just didn't know it yet. Maya stood outside the airport terminal, the Texas sun beating down on her shoulders. She took a deep breath, counting silently to 10, a technique she'd learned during her first year of field training. The anger simmering beneath her composed exterior wouldn't help her now. She needed clarity. She walked toward the parking garage, pulling her suitcase behind her with one hand, while fishing in her blazer pocket with the other. Her fingers closed around a slim metal case about the size of a credit card. She flipped it open to reveal a backup phone, one of several emergency tools she carried that the airport officers had failed to discover. Finding a quiet corner behind a concrete pillar in the parking structure, Maya powered on the device. It connected to a secure network within seconds. She dialed a number from memory. Harrington answered a deep voice after just one ring. Sir, it's Johnson. We have a situation. There was a pause then. You're supposed to be boarding in 20 minutes. That was the plan, Maya replied, keeping her voice even. But I've been removed from the airport by security. Officers Thompson and Reynolds. Another pause, longer this time. Maya could picture Director Harrington's face, the way his eyebrows would pull together, the slight tightening of his jaw. Explain, he said finally. Maya recounted the incident in precise detail, the initial stop, the questioning, the accusations, and finally her removal. She included direct quotes from both officers, particularly Thompson's possessive reference to my airport and the thinly veiled threats. They confiscated my primary phone and flagged my ID in their system, she concluded. The mission is compromised unless we take action. Are you recording this call? Harrington asked. Yes, sir. Good. I want you to go to the Riverfront Hotel. Check in under the name Claire Bennett. I'll have a team meet you there within 2 hours. What about Istanbul? Maya asked, thinking of the operation that had been months in planning. Liu can handle it. I'm pulling you for something more important. Maya raised an eyebrow, though Harrington couldn't see it. More important than the Ankara intel? Yes, Harrington said simply. You. Before Maya could respond, he continued. This isn't the first incident of this nature at Dallas International, but it's going to be the last. Sir, with respect, this isn't worth derailing operations. Johnson, Harrington cut in, his voice steel wrapped in velvet. The agency has invested millions in your training. You're one of our most effective field operatives, but more importantly, you're under my command, which means your safety and dignity are non-negotiable. These officers didn't just obstruct an agent on duty. They displayed a pattern of behavior that compromises national security. What happens when they detain the wrong person? When their bias creates an actual security breach? Maya listened silently. Harrington rarely spoke at such length and never with such intensity. Check into the hotel, he continued after a moment. Document everything while it's fresh. I'll see you soon. The call ended, leaving Maya standing alone in the garage, the weight of Harrington's words settling around her. Despite her frustration at being pulled from the mission, she felt a wave of something unexpected, validation. In 12 years with the agency, she'd navigated countless challenging situations, from hostile interrogations to active combat zones. But sometimes the hardest moments weren't in foreign territories facing known enemies. They were here at home, facing the subtle and not-so-subtle reminders that some people would always see her skin color before they saw her badge. Maya tucked the phone away and hailed a taxi outside the parking structure. As she settled into the back seat, she gave the driver the hotel address, then turned to look back at the airport terminal gleaming in the distance. "Bad day?" the driver asked, catching her eye in the rearview mirror. Maya smiled slightly. "Just getting started." Meanwhile, back at the security checkpoint, Officers Thompson and Reynolds watched the departure board as Flight 2387 to Istanbul began boarding. "That was weird, right?" Reynolds said, leaning against the desk where Thompson was finishing the incident report. "The way she kept asking for a supervisor," Thompson snorted. "They always think asking for the manager will help. Like I haven't seen every trick in the book." "Still," Reynolds persisted, lowering his voice, "her story checked out. I looked up that company while you were talking to dispatch. Meridian Global Consulting is real. Pretty big firm, actually." Thompson stopped typing and looked up at his partner. "Are you serious right now? You think I don't know how these people operate? They get some fancy clothes, memorize a few big words, and think they can walk in anywhere like they own the place." Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just saying maybe we should have verified with her supervisor before..." "Before what?" Thompson challenged. "Before doing our jobs?" She was belligerent and uncooperative. End of story. He returned to his report, typing with more force than necessary. Reynolds watched him for a moment, then shrugged and walked away to resume his position at the checkpoint. Neither officer noticed the security cameras above them, their tiny red lights blinking steadily as they captured every word. In a monitoring room 3 floors above the main terminal, Tessa Chen, the airport's chief of security operations, rewound the footage for the 3rd time. She'd been alerted to a potential incident by an automated system that flagged unusual detention patterns. This was the 4th such flag in 2 months, all involving the same officers. She watched the interaction again, her frown deepening as she observed Thompson's body language, the way he positioned himself to intimidate, the subtle aggression in his movements. The audio was clear enough to catch most of what was said. "Damn it, Mike," she muttered to herself. Thompson had been with the airport for 7 years, and his record had been mostly clean. But in the past year, something had changed. The complaints had started trickling in. Nothing major at first, just passengers reporting rudeness or excessive scrutiny. Then the pattern emerged. Tessa picked up her phone and dialed a number. "HR, this is Diane." "Diane, it's Tessa. I need the personnel files for Officers Michael Thompson and James Reynolds, and I need them now." "This about the incident at Checkpoint C? I just got an alert about the report being filed." "Yes. And I want to see every complaint, every write-up, every performance review for both of them from the past 2 years." "That's serious?" Diane asked, her voice dropping. "Potentially," Tessa replied. "Also, pull the footage from cameras 32, 33, and 34 for the past hour. Send it all to my secure server. I'll be down to sign for the files in 10 minutes. As she ended the call, Tessa's office phone rang. The caller ID showed a Washington, D.C. area code. She answered cautiously. "This is Chen." "Ms. Chen, this is Director Harrington with the Central Intelligence Agency. I believe we need to talk about 2 of your security officers." Tessa sat up straighter, her hand tightening on the receiver. "I was just reviewing an incident involving Officers Thompson and Reynolds. May I ask how the CIA is involved?" "The woman they removed from your airport is one of my agents," Harrington replied, his tone measured but leaving no room for doubt. "She was en route to a sensitive operation when she was detained without cause, had her agency-issued equipment confiscated, and was ejected from the premises." Tessa closed her eyes briefly. This was worse than she'd thought. "I understand, Director. I've already initiated an internal review." "I appreciate that, Ms. Chen. However, this is now a federal security matter. I've dispatched a team to your location. They'll arrive within the hour. I'd like your full cooperation in this investigation." "Of course," Tessa agreed immediately. "I'll provide whatever assistance they need." After hanging up, she sat motionless for a moment, absorbing the implications. Then she reached for her radio. "This is Chen. I need Officers Thompson and Reynolds relieved of duty immediately and escorted to Conference Room B. Tell them it's for a special assignment briefing." She paused, then added, "And make sure they surrender their badges and equipment before they leave the checkpoint." The Riverfront Hotel was a sleek glass tower overlooking the Trinity River. Maya checked in under the name Claire Bennett as instructed, and was escorted to a suite on the 20th floor. She had barely set down her suitcase when there was a knock at the door. Looking through the peephole, she recognized Agent Kai Patel, one of Harrington's most trusted security specialists. "Johnson," he greeted her as she opened the door. "Director Harrington sent me ahead of the team. They're about 20 minutes out." Maya nodded, stepping aside to let him enter. "That was fast." "The director made some calls," Kai replied simply, setting his laptop bag on the desk. "He's taking this very seriously." "It's not the first time I've dealt with this kind of situation," Maya said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "It comes with the territory." Kai looked at her sharply. "No, it doesn't, and it shouldn't." Before Maya could respond, he continued, "The director has authorized a full investigation. We're treating this as a potential breach of national security protocols." Maya raised her eyebrows. "That's a significant escalation." "Those officers interfered with an agent on active duty," Kai said, his voice matter-of-fact. "They confiscated secure agency communication devices. They compromised an international operation, and they did it based on personal bias." He paused, meeting her eyes directly. "The director is making an example of this one." For the first time since the incident, Maya felt a genuine smile tug at her lips. Harrington always did have a flair for the dramatic. "It's not just for show," Kai replied, opening his laptop. "He's been pushing for systematic changes in how we interact with domestic security personnel. This incident is going to be Exhibit A in his presentation to the Oversight Committee next month." Maya considered this as Kai began setting up a secure connection. She'd always respected Harrington, but this level of response surprised her. In her experience, these situations were typically handled with quiet reprimands or, at most, sensitivity training for the offending officers. "They'll be here soon to take your formal statement," Kai continued, typing rapidly.
"In the meantime, the director asked me to show you something." He turned the laptop toward her.
On the screen was a security video from the airport. Maya watched as the camera zoomed in on Thompson and Reynolds at their station after she'd been escorted out. "We've got audio," Kai said. Turning up the volume, Thompson's voice came through clearly. "Told you. These people always think they're special. Wave some fancy job title around and expect us to bow down." Reynolds looked uncomfortable. "I don't know, Mike, something felt off about this one." "Trust me," Thompson replied with a dismissive wave. "I've been doing this long enough to know when someone doesn't belong." Maya watched in silence, her expression unchanging, though her stomach tightened at Thompson's words. Kai closed the video. "There's more, but you get the idea. They've been recording their shifts for months as part of a new security protocol. The airport has footage of at least 7 similar incidents. And no one noticed the pattern?" Maya asked. "Someone did," Kai replied. "Their chief of security was already investigating when the director called her. Apparently Thompson's behavior has been escalating." Another knock came at the door. Kai checked his watch. "That'll be the team." As he moved to answer it, Maya remained seated, processing everything. This wasn't just about her anymore. It had become something larger, perhaps something necessary. She straightened her shoulders as the door opened, revealing Director Harrington himself. Flanked by 2 agents she recognized from the legal department. "Johnson." Harrington greeted her with a nod. "Ready to make some history?" Maya stood, meeting his gaze steadily. "Always am, sir." 3 days had passed since the incident at Dallas International Airport. Officer Michael Thompson sat in the break room, stirring his coffee without really seeing it. His mind was elsewhere, replaying the events that had led to this moment. "You hear anything yet?" James Reynolds asked as he dropped into the chair across from Thompson. Thompson shook his head. "Just that we're supposed to report to conference room A at 10 for some kind of administrative hearing." "Administrative hearing," Reynolds repeated, fidgeting with his badge. "That doesn't sound good." "It's just procedure," Thompson insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. "They have to go through the motions whenever there's a complaint." Reynolds leaned forward, lowering his voice despite the empty room. "Mike, I looked into that woman, Maya Johnson. She's not in any of our databases. Not the no-fly list, not the watch list, nothing. Her ID checked out perfectly. Her company is real. Everything she told us was legitimate." Thompson's jaw tightened. "So what? She was uncooperative." "She questioned our authority." That's grounds enough. Is it, though? Reynolds pressed. Because I read the manual again last night, and it says, I know what the damn manual says, Thompson snapped. I've been doing this job for 12 years, Jimmy. You've been here, what, 3? Trust me, I know when someone's trying to hide something. Reynolds sat back, his expression troubled.
Chief Chen has never called an administrative hearing for a passenger complaint before.
Something feels different about this one. Thompson checked his watch, 9:45. We should go. Wouldn't want to give them another reason to write us up. They walked in silence through the corridors of the administrative wing, a part of the airport most passengers never saw. The walls here were plain beige, lined with offices and conference rooms instead of shops and restaurants. Conference room A was at the end of the hallway, its frosted glass door revealing shadows of movement inside. Thompson straightened his uniform and knocked. Enter, called a voice from within. Thompson pushed open the door and stopped short. Instead of the small panel he'd expected, Chief Chen and maybe an HR representative, the large conference room was filled with people. At the head of the table sat Tessa Chen, her expression unreadable. Beside her was a stern-looking older man in an expensive suit. Around the table sat what appeared to be federal officials, based on their badges and the serious set of their faces. Officers Thompson and Reynolds, Chen said formally. Please take a seat. They moved to the 2 empty chairs at the far end of the table, facing the group like defendants before a jury. Thompson felt sweat forming at his hairline but kept his expression neutral. Do you know why you're here? Asked the man beside Chen. Thompson cleared his throat. We were told there would be an administrative hearing regarding a passenger complaint. The man nodded. I'm Director William Harrington of the Central Intelligence Agency. This is indeed an administrative hearing, but it's also significantly more than that. Thompson felt his stomach drop. The CIA? What the hell was going on? Harrington pressed a button on a remote and a large screen on the wall flickered to life. It showed footage from the security checkpoint, capturing Thompson and Reynolds' interaction with Maya Johnson from multiple angles. 3 days ago, Harrington continued, you detained and subsequently removed a passenger from this airport. I'd like you to watch the footage and explain your actions. For the next 15 minutes, Thompson and Reynolds sat in growing discomfort as their encounter with Maya played out on the screen. The multiple camera angles captured details Thompson hadn't realized were visible. The aggressive way he'd positioned himself, the dismissive expressions, the unnecessarily rough handling of her belongings. Worse, the audio was crystal clear, catching every word, every insinuation, every subtle threat. When the footage ended with Maya being escorted from the building, Harrington turned to them. Officer Thompson, would you care to explain why you determined Ms. Johnson was a security risk? Thompson shifted in his seat. She exhibited suspicious behavior. She was evasive about her employment. She was carrying an electronic device that wouldn't power on, and she became confrontational when questioned. Confrontational, Harrington repeated. He pressed another button, and the footage resumed, zooming in on Maya's face as she calmly asked about her rights. Is this what you consider confrontational, Officer Thompson? Thompson felt heat rising in his face. It's not just about her words. It's about her attitude, her body language. There were red flags that don't necessarily show up on camera. I see, Harrington said. And would you say that your response was proportional and in line with airport security protocols? Before Thompson could answer, Reynolds spoke up. Sir, I'd like to state for the record that Officer Thompson took the lead on this interaction. I had reservations about the escalation but didn't voice them effectively. Thompson turned to glare at his partner. What are you doing? Being honest, Reynolds replied quietly. Harrington ignored the exchange and pressed on. Officer Thompson, you stated in your report that you checked Ms. Johnson's employment status and found no record of her at Meridian Global Consulting. How exactly did you verify this? Thompson hesitated. I used the standard database search. The standard database, Harrington repeated. And which database would that be? The TSA database, Thompson replied, his confidence faltering. Chief Chen spoke for the first time. Officer Thompson, the TSA database doesn't contain employment records for private corporations. The room fell silent. Thompson felt trapped, cornered by his own lies. Harrington let the silence stretch uncomfortable seconds before continuing. Let me be clear about what actually happened. You singled out Ms. Johnson because of her race. You subjected her to additional scrutiny without cause. When she reasonably questioned this treatment, you escalated the situation unnecessarily. And when she didn't show the deference you expected, you abused your authority to remove her from the airport. That's not, Thompson began, but Harrington cut him off. What makes this situation particularly serious, he continued, is that Maya Johnson is a senior field operative with the Central Intelligence Agency. She was en route to a classified operation when you interfered with her travel. You confiscated agency property. You compromised national security because of your personal bias. The blood drained from Thompson's face. Reynolds looked physically ill. A CIA agent? Thompson whispered. Yes, Harrington confirmed. With a security clearance level significantly higher than anyone in this room, myself included. He pressed another button on the remote and a new image appeared on the screen. Maya Johnson's official government identification, complete with agency seals and security clearance designations. This isn't just about one incident, Harrington continued. Your security logs show a pattern of disproportionate stops and secondary screenings for passengers of color. In the past 6 months, you've detained 47 passengers for additional questioning. 42 of them were minorities. Thompson stared at the table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. We've also reviewed the body camera footage from after Ms. Johnson's removal, Chief Chen added. Your comments to Officer Reynolds were particularly enlightening. Thompson remembered his words with a sinking feeling. These people always think they're special. I want to be absolutely clear, Harrington said, leaning forward. This incident is being treated as a federal security breach. There will be a full investigation into your conduct, your decision-making processes, and your fitness for any position of authority. Reynolds looked up, his face pale. What happens now? Effective immediately. You are both suspended without pay pending the outcome of the investigation, Chen answered. You will surrender your badges and credentials before leaving this room. Thompson felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. 12 years on the job and it was all crashing down around him. This is ridiculous, he said, desperation edging into his voice. We were just doing our jobs. How were we supposed to know she was CIA? You weren't, Harrington replied evenly. That's the point, Officer Thompson. You're not supposed to know who people really are. That's why security protocols exist, to ensure that everyone is treated according to the same objective standards, regardless of how they look or where they come from. He closed the folder in front of him. The fact that Ms. Johnson was an agency operative simply means that your actions have attracted a higher level of scrutiny. But make no mistake, this would be happening even if she were exactly who she claimed to be, a business consultant catching a flight. Thompson felt the weight of every pair of eyes in the room, the judgment, the disappointment, the anger. I'd like to speak to a union representative, he said finally. Of course, Chen nodded. That's your right. The union has already been notified of this hearing. As if on cue, the door opened, and a middle-aged woman in a suit entered carrying a briefcase. I'm Patricia Walsh from the Security Officers Union, she introduced herself. I'll be representing Officers Thompson and Reynolds. She took in the room with a quick professional glance, noting the federal officials and the footage still frozen on the screen. I'd like a moment with my clients before we continue. Certainly, Harrington agreed. We'll take a 15-minute recess. As the others filed out of the room, Walsh sat across from the two officers. Once the door closed, her professional demeanor slipped, revealing frustration. You two have stepped in at this time, she said bluntly. I've reviewed the footage, it's bad. They're making it political, Thompson argued, turning a routine security matter into some kind of racial thing. Walsh shook her head. No, Thompson. You made it racial. The footage speaks for itself. She turned to Reynolds. I might be able to help. You showed hesitation. There's evidence you questioned Thompson's approach. So what are you saying? Thompson demanded. You're throwing me under the bus? I'm saying I'll do what I can for both of you, Walsh replied. But you need to understand the severity of the situation. This isn't just about your jobs anymore. There could be civil or even criminal liability here. Thompson slumped in his chair, the reality of his situation finally hitting home. All because of one passenger, he muttered. No, Walsh corrected him. All because of a pattern of behavior that finally caught up with you. The fact that this particular passenger happened to be a CIA agent just means you picked the wrong person to target this time. She opened her briefcase and pulled out some forms. Now let's talk about your options. They're limited, but they exist. Outside in the hallway, Harrington stood with Chief Chen, both speaking in low voices. Will this stick? Chen asked. Thompson has a clean record on paper. It'll stick, Harrington assured her. We have the footage, we have the pattern of behavior, and most importantly, we have the political will to make an example of this case. He checked his watch. Maya should be landing in Istanbul about now. The operation continues. Chen nodded thoughtfully. She must be quite an agent. One of our best, Harrington replied. And after this is over, I'm making sure everyone knows it. 2 weeks after the administrative hearing, Maya Johnson sat at a sidewalk cafe in Istanbul, sipping strong Turkish coffee while reviewing encrypted documents on her tablet. The operation had proceeded smoothly despite her delayed arrival. Her partner, Agent Liu, had secured the initial contacts, allowing Maya to step in seamlessly once she finally reached Turkey. Her secure phone buzzed with an incoming message. Director Harrington's name flashed on the screen. Operation complete, she typed back, knowing he was waiting for confirmation. Excellent, came the immediate reply. Extraction team standing by. Also, we need to discuss your return. Developments in Dallas. Maya raised an eyebrow at this last part but didn't respond. In the field, less communication was always better. She would find out the details soon enough. 48 hours later, Maya walked through the private terminal at Andrews Air Force Base, where a car was waiting to take her directly to CIA headquarters in Langley. She had expected to file her mission report first, then deal with the airport incident as a separate matter. The fact that Harrington wanted to see her immediately suggested something significant had happened. The car pulled up to the main entrance where Kai Patel was waiting for her. Welcome back, he greeted her. Successful mission? Target acquired, intelligence secured, Maya replied with a small smile. The usual. Kai nodded appreciatively. The director's waiting in the conference room. There are some other people you should meet. Other people? Maya questioned as they walked through security. The airport incident created some waves, Kai explained, bigger than we anticipated. They took the elevator to the executive floor, where Harrington's office and the main conference rooms were located. Maya had been here many times for mission briefings, but today the atmosphere felt different, charged with purpose beyond the usual operational matters. Kai paused outside the conference room door. Just so you know, the Attorney General is in there. Maya's eyes widened slightly. The Attorney General of the United States? The very same, Kai confirmed, along with the TSA director and a representative from the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. Maya took a moment to process this. Whatever was happening went far beyond a simple case of airport security overreach. Ready? Kai asked. Maya straightened her jacket and nodded. Let's do this. Inside, Director Harrington was deep in conversation with a small group of people around the conference table. He looked up as Maya entered, his face brightening with genuine pleasure. Johnson, he said warmly, crossing the room to shake her hand. Outstanding work in Istanbul. The intelligence you secured will be invaluable. Thank you, sir, Maya replied, professionally, though she couldn't help feeling a glow of pride at the public acknowledgement. Harrington turned to the others. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Senior Field Operative Maya Johnson. A distinguished woman in her 60s rose from her seat, extending her hand. Agent Johnson, I'm Attorney General Veronica Williams. I've heard impressive things about your work. Maya shook her hand, maintaining her composure despite her surprise. It's an honor, Madam Attorney General. Introductions continued around the table. The TSA Director, Alexander Chen, the Justice Department Representative, Gabriel Ortiz, and several other high-ranking officials from various security agencies. Once everyone was seated, Harrington took charge of the meeting. As you all know, 2 weeks ago, Agent Johnson was removed from Dallas International Airport by security officers, who exhibited clear bias in their actions. What began as an internal review has evolved into something much larger. He nodded to Director Chen from the TSA, who opened a folder in front of him. Following the incident, we conducted a comprehensive audit of security operations at Dallas International, Chen explained. What we found was disturbing. Officers Thompson and Reynolds showed a consistent pattern of disproportionately targeting minorities for additional screening, detentions, and removals. But they weren't alone. He slid a document across the table to Maya. It contained statistics, graphs, and tables showing security intervention patterns across multiple airports. We expanded our investigation to 20 major airports nationwide, Chen continued. The data reveals systemic issues in how security protocols are implemented. While our written policies prohibit racial profiling, the practical application shows clear disparities. Maya studied the document, noting the stark differences in detention rates between white passengers and passengers of color. This is comprehensive, she said carefully. It needed to be. Attorney General Williams interjected. What happened to you, Agent Johnson, was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a deeper problem that threatens both civil liberties and national security. Harrington nodded in agreement. When security personnel allow bias to influence their decisions, they create blind spots that can be exploited. They focus on the wrong threats while missing actual security risks. Gabriel Ortiz from the Justice Department leaned forward. We're preparing to announce a major initiative next week. New training protocols, independent oversight, and accountability measures for all airport security operations nationwide. And you want me involved, Maya stated, understanding now why she had been called to this meeting. Yes, Williams confirmed. Your experience as both a federal agent and a victim of profiling gives you a unique perspective. We'd like you to consult on the development of the new protocols and potentially assist with training implementation. Maya took a moment to consider this. Her expertise was in field operations, not policy development or training. But she also recognized the importance of what they were proposing. What about Officers Thompson and Reynolds? She asked. Thompson has been terminated, Chen replied. The investigation revealed multiple violations beyond your incident, including falsifying reports and abusive behavior toward other passengers. Reynolds has been suspended and will undergo comprehensive retraining before any decision about his future employment is made. Maya nodded, satisfied with this outcome. And the operation? My presence here suggests you want more than just my consultation on new protocols. Harrington smiled slightly. Perceptive as always, Johnson. Yes, there's an operational component. We're creating a specialized task force to identify and address security vulnerabilities created by biased enforcement. We'd like you to lead it. Lead it? Maya repeated, surprised. Field operatives rarely led task forces, especially ones involving multiple agencies. You have the operational experience, the analytical skills, and now, unfortunately, the personal insight into how these issues manifest, Harrington explained. Plus, your record speaks for itself. 26 successful missions, 14 high-value intelligence acquisitions, and 3 saved operations that would have otherwise failed. The Attorney General nodded in agreement. This task force needs someone who understands both security imperatives and civil rights concerns. Someone who can navigate between different agencies and perspectives. Based on your file, you're uniquely qualified. Maya looked around the table, measuring the seriousness of the offer and the commitment behind it. This wasn't just about addressing what had happened to her. It was about preventing similar incidents and strengthening national security in the process. I'd need to select my own team, she said finally. Of course, Harrington agreed immediately. And full access to security data from all participating agencies. Already arranged, Chen confirmed. Then I accept, Maya said. When do we start? Immediately, the Attorney General replied. We're announcing the initiative at a press conference next Monday. The task force will be introduced then. As the meeting continued, they discussed logistics, resources, and immediate priorities. Maya listened carefully, her mind already working through potential approaches and necessary first steps. This was not a direction she had expected her career to take, but she recognized its importance both professionally and personally. Later, as she left the conference room with Harrington, he paused in the hallway. You know, when I pulled you from the Istanbul mission, I was angry, he admitted. Angry that one of my best agents had been treated that way. Angry at the system that allowed it to happen. Maya nodded, understanding. It worked out. Lou handled the initial contact well. That's not the point, Harrington said quietly. The point is that no one should have to handle discrimination as just another operational challenge. Not civilians, and certainly not federal agents executing their duties. Maya studied her mentor's face, seeing the genuine concern there. You've turned this into something productive, she acknowledged. Something that might actually create change. We have the opportunity, Harrington corrected her. Whether it creates lasting change will depend on what we do with it. He smiled slightly. Which is why I wanted you leading the task force. You don't just complete missions, Johnson. You improve them. 2 days later, Maya stood in the observation room at the Dallas International Airport, watching the security checkpoints through one-way glass. Beside her, Tessa Chen, the airport's chief of security, pointed out recent changes in procedure. We've adjusted the randomization protocols for additional screening, Chen explained, and installed new software that flags potential bias patterns in real time. Maya nodded approvingly. What about personnel training? That's where we'd like your input, Chen replied. We've developed a preliminary program, but it lacks perspective. The lived experience, Maya suggested. Exactly, Chen agreed. Numbers and policies are important, but they don't tell the whole story. They watched as a family was selected for additional screening. Parents with 2 young children, their suitcases opened and inspected with professional courtesy. The officers handling that family, Maya noted. They're new? Chen shook her head. No, they've been here for years, but they've always had clean records. Not everyone falls into the same patterns as Thompson and Reynolds. But the environment allowed those patterns to develop, Maya pointed out. That's what needs to change, not just removing the bad actors, but creating systems where bias can't take root. That's why we need your task force, Chen said simply. As they continued their tour of the facility, Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Kai. The final team selections for the task force had been approved. They could begin work as soon as she returned to Washington. Maya looked out over the busy terminal, watching travelers of all backgrounds moving through the space. Most would never know about the changes happening behind the scenes. They wouldn't see the task force reports, the policy revisions, or the training materials being developed. But perhaps someday, they would notice something else, the absence of fear when approaching a security checkpoint. The confidence that they would be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their appearance. It wasn't why she had joined the agency all those years ago. But standing there, watching the airport's human traffic flow beneath her, Maya realized it might be one of the most important missions she'd ever undertaken. 6 months had passed since the incident at Dallas International Airport. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the conference center at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Facility in Georgia, where Maya Johnson stood at the podium, facing a room filled with security personnel from airports across the country. Security isn't just about finding threats, she said, her voice calm but commanding. It's about recognizing what actually constitutes a threat in the first place. On the large screen behind her, statistics and case studies illustrated the points of her presentation, the measurable security improvements that had resulted from the new protocols her task force had implemented at test sites around the country. When we allow personal bias to influence our threat assessment, she continued, we create blind spots. We focus resources in the wrong places. We miss what's important while fixating on what's familiar or comfortable to target. From the back of the room, Director Harrington watched with quiet pride. In the 6 months since appointing Maya to lead the Security Bias Reduction Task Force, he had seen her transform from an exceptional field operative into a formidable leader and advocate. The program she had developed was already showing promising results, with early data indicating more effective security outcomes and fewer civil rights complaints at participating airports. As Maya concluded her presentation and opened the floor for questions, Harrington noticed 2 men sitting together near the middle of the room. One was taking detailed notes, his expression thoughtful. The other sat with arms crossed, his body language broadcasting skepticism. Even from a distance, Harrington recognized former officers Thompson. Their presence was no accident. They had been specifically invited, Thompson as part of his community service requirement following the civil rights settlement, and Reynolds is part of his retraining program. While Reynolds had shown genuine remorse and a willingness to learn, Thompson had fought the accusations until video evidence and statistical analysis made his position untenable. A hand went up in the audience. What about cultural differences that might be mistaken for suspicious behavior? How do we account for those in our assessments? Excellent question, Maya replied. That's precisely why we've included cultural awareness training in the new protocols. Understanding diverse behavioral norms helps distinguish between actual suspicious activity and simply unfamiliar cultural expressions. She fielded several more questions before Reynolds raised his hand. The room fell quiet as people recognized him from the news coverage of the case. Agent Johnson, he began, his voice slightly strained, the new system you're proposing relies heavily on objective criteria and specific behavioral indicators rather than officer intuition. But many of us were trained to trust our gut. How do you reconcile these approaches? Maya nodded, acknowledging the thoughtful nature of the question. Intuition has its place, she agreed. Experienced security personnel develop pattern recognition that can be valuable. But intuition is also where unconscious bias often hides. The key is to ask yourself, what specific behaviors am I observing that concern me? Can I articulate them clearly? Would these same behaviors concern me if exhibited by someone of a different background? She smiled slightly. The goal isn't to eliminate intuition, but to ensure it's informed by objective criteria, rather than subconscious biases we may not even recognize in ourselves. Reynolds nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer. Thompson beside him remained stone-faced. After the session ended, Maya gathered her materials as attendees filed out. Harrington approached the podium. Impressive presentation, he said. You had them engaged from start to finish. Most of them, Maya corrected, glancing toward Thompson, who was exiting the room without looking back. You can't win them all. Harrington shrugged. But Reynolds seems to be taking it seriously. As if on cue, Reynolds approached them, hesitating slightly. Agent Johnson, he said, I was hoping I could have a word. Maya exchanged a glance with Harrington, who nodded almost imperceptibly before stepping away to give them privacy. What can I do for you, Mr. Reynolds? Maya asked, keeping her tone professional. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to apologize in person. What happened at the airport? There's no excuse for it. I should have spoken up sooner. Maya studied him for a moment. His remorse seemed genuine, his discomfort real. Thank you for saying that, she replied finally. It couldn't have been easy to come here today. Easier for me than for Thompson, Reynolds said with a humorless smile. He still doesn't really get it. Thinks this whole program is political correctness gone too far. And what do you think? Maya asked, genuinely curious. Reynolds considered the question carefully. I think I was wrong. Not just about you, but about a lot of things. The retraining program has been eye-opening. The data doesn't lie. He gestured toward the screen where Maya's presentation still displayed the security improvement statistics. Better outcomes with fewer complaints. Hard to argue with results, Maya nodded. That's why we focus on the data. This isn't about feelings or politics. It's about effective security. I'm being considered for reinstatement, Reynolds said after a moment. With additional supervision and ongoing training, of course. I know, Maya replied. Your case came across my desk last week. Reynolds looked surprised. You're involved in that decision? The task force reviews all reinstatement applications for officers involved in bias incidents, Maya explained. We make recommendations to the TSA leadership. And what will your recommendation be? Reynolds asked, unable to hide his anxiety. Maya considered the man before her. 6 months ago, he had stood by while his partner harassed and humiliated her. But he had also shown hesitation, had questioned Thompson's actions, and had ultimately cooperated fully with the investigation. People can change, Mr. Reynolds, she said finally. Not everyone does, but the capacity is there. My recommendation will reflect both what happened 6 months ago and the efforts you've made since then. Relief washed over his face. Thank you. That's fair. As Reynolds walked away, Harrington rejoined Maya. Well handled, he observed. Thompson didn't want to talk. Some people need more time, Maya replied diplomatically. And some never get there at all. Harrington nodded thoughtfully. The Attorney General called this morning. The pilot program has been approved for nationwide implementation. Congress allocated the full funding package. Maya's eyes widened. That's ahead of schedule. We weren't expecting a decision until next quarter. The preliminary results impressed the committee, Harrington explained, especially the 23% increase in actual contraband detection at the test airports. Turns out when officers focus on behavior rather than appearance, they get better at their jobs. Who knew? His dry tone made Maya smile. Everyone on my team knew. That's why they've been working overtime for 6 months. Speaking of your team, Harrington continued, there's been a development you should know about. The UN has expressed interest in adapting your protocols for international airports. They've requested a liaison from our task force to work with their Security Council. Maya raised an eyebrow. International implementation. That's unexpected, but well-deserved, Harrington added. Your work here is making waves, Johnson. Good waves. As they walked toward the exit, Maya found herself reflecting on the journey of the past 6 months. What had begun as a humiliating and infuriating personal experience had evolved into something far more significant, a catalyst for systemic change that would affect thousands of travelers and security personnel. There's someone else who wants to meet you, Harrington said as they reached the lobby. He nodded toward a young black woman in a cadet uniform, waiting nervously by the information desk. That's Zoe Washington, he explained, top of her class at the TSA Training Academy. She read about your case and cited your task force work in her final thesis on security modernization. She specifically requested to be assigned to one of our test airports. Maya watched as the young woman straightened her uniform, clearly trying to appear professional and composed. The next generation, Harrington said quietly. They're paying attention, Johnson. What happened to you? What you've done with it? It matters to them. Maya nodded, feeling a sudden wave of emotion she hadn't expected. Send her to the Dallas office, she decided. They could use some fresh perspective there. Already done, Harrington replied with a smile. She starts next month. Later that evening, Maya sat alone in her hotel room, reviewing data from the day's training sessions on her tablet. Feedback surveys showed overwhelmingly positive responses, with 87% of attendees reporting that they plan to implement specific techniques from the program. Her phone buzzed with a message from Kai Patel. Turn on CNN. Maya found the remote and switched on the television. A news anchor was midway through a story. Marking 6 months since the controversial incident at Dallas International Airport that sparked nationwide reform of security protocols. The Department of Homeland Security announced today that the pilot program developed by the Security Bias Reduction Task Force will be implemented at all major airports by the end of the year. The screen showed footage of the Attorney General at a press conference, with Maya visible in the background among other officials. The anchor continued. The program, which focuses on behavior-based security assessment rather than demographic factors, has already shown promising results at test locations, with improved threat detection and fewer civil rights complaints. Maya switched off the television and returned to her work, a small smile playing at her lips. The media coverage would help with public awareness and acceptance of the changes, but the real work was happening in training rooms like the one she'd led today. One security officer at a time, one airport at a time. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Director Harrington. Istanbul operation contact resurfaced. Need your expertise. Flight details sent to your secure email. The task force can manage without you for a week. Maya's smile widened. Field work. Despite her success with the task force, she had missed the direct operational engagement of her previous role. Harrington understood that, which was why he occasionally pulled her back into the field for high-priority missions. She began packing her bag, mentally shifting gears from trainer back to operative. As she worked, she thought about the airport she would pass through tomorrow, the same one where Officers Thompson and Reynolds had stopped her 6 months ago. But this time, she would move through security under the new protocols her own team had developed. The irony wasn't lost on her. What had begun as discrimination had transformed into innovation. A personal humiliation had become a professional triumph, and Maya Johnson, who had always preferred to blend into the background, had become the face of meaningful change. She zipped her suitcase closed, already anticipating the mission ahead. Some battles were fought in airport security lines, others in training rooms and Congressiona.